Democratic Alliance's urgent application challenging Tshwane Council's decision to suspend City Manager Johann Mettler and reinstate Chief Financial Officer Gareth Mnisi. The DA wants the court to review and set aside what it describes as unlawful councillor resolutions amid claims that 13 votes were improperly conducted, altering the outcome of both decisions. For the very latest on the court proceedings, we cross live to SABC News reporter Patricia Visagie at the Pretoria High Court. A very good morning to you, Patricia. So two matters to be heard today, or there are two legs to this matter. We've got the decision to suspend Mettler, but also the decision to reinstate Mnisi. Just talk to us about what we're expecting to hear in that challenge brought by the Democratic Alliance.
Well, good morning. We're coming to you live outside of the Pretoria High Court, where, of course, the Democratic Alliance just staged a short protest. And they also briefly updated the media on some of the sentiments that they hold following the Tshwane Council voting process that obviously led to the suspension of the City Manager Johann Mettler and the reinstatement of the CFO Gareth Mnisi. So what we expect to happen today in court is arguments into the urgent application that is brought by the DA, where they're ultimately challenging the outcome of that particular council sitting that took place earlier this month, where they're saying that it was conducted unlawfully. So there are 13 votes from the Democratic Alliance that's obviously at the center of how the voting outcome of that particular council sitting concluded, that led to Johann Mettler being suspended and Gareth Mnisi being reinstated. And just to give you a little bit of background, the issue around Gareth Mnisi being, very sensitive. You'd remember he was implicated in serious allegations of tender-related interference in the city of Tshwane, and that led to his suspension. And of course, one of the MMCs, Kulufelo Murodi, who was ultimately fired. So the DA is saying that bringing back Mnisi under this cloud that continues to hang, around him, that is, just very controversial and ultimately not respecting the will of the people. But without wasting time, I want to bring in the DA's Tshwane mayoral candidate, Celia Brunk. He's also, or rather was the former mayor of Tshwane, just for him to outline the basis of their unhappiness about the outcome of that Tshwane voting process that has brought them here to court today. Thank you so much, Mr. Brunk, for joining us. Again, you highlighted now that that whole council voting, was to defend corruption, rather.
Absolutely. The vote was rigged. The majority of councillors in Tshwane voted against Mettler's suspension because there weren't any grounds for that suspension, and they voted for the accusations against Gareth Mnisi to be treated as serious. In other words, that dismissal, if he's found guilty, should be on the table. But the council vote was rigged by the Speaker, who subtracted 13 votes from whatever the ANC and the EFF opposed. And that is what we are here in court. It's an urgent matter to argue. The urgency of the matter is that if Mettler is suspended for 3 months, we believe that there will be serious attempts to loot from the city of Tshwane by the ANC-led coalition. We've got a couple of months until the election. These parties are hard up for money. We know that Mettler has put his foot down on irregular tenders. We fear that under an acting city manager, those tenders will be awarded. On the issue of Mnisi, the urgency is if he is simply allowed to come back to work with a final warning, as they now claim, the integrity, the discipline of Tshwane's processes will be seriously compromised. Anybody who watched the Madlanga Commission and saw those messages implicating Mnisi, the ANC, the EFF, Action SA, and then Mnisi comes back and he gets only a final written warning, which isn't permanent in any event, they will lose trust in the process, and that's why the DA is fighting on urgent grounds here in court to have that rigged council vote set aside.
There's also been a pushback against the DA from Action SA. We've heard that, where they're saying that you're politicking around this. The 13 councillors, the issue around that, they claim that the 13 DA councillors were absent on that particular day, and that could have actually, saved Mettler. But you have a different view on this. If you can maybe just share this with our viewers.
If Nasipi Moya and Action SA really believed the nonsense story about the 13 councillors, they would have answered to our court papers. Nobody has challenged our version of events. Those councillors, 13 councillors took leave, 10 councillors were actually present in the council meeting. That included one from the Freedom Front Plus. They weren't asked to leave. There was no roll call. They voted, and simply the Speaker then decided to rig the vote. In fact, I want to say something about the behavior of Action SA. It is really shameful. The Mayor could have, at various occasions, stopped the action against Mettler and made sure that the allegations against Mnisi are treated seriously. We even gave her an opportunity here in court, and she simply stood back and folded her hands. It's a complete abdication of leadership, and they should be ashamed. And the people who voted for Action SA must know that those votes have gone to reinforcing a corruption network here in Tshwane.
There are also the sentiments around the so-called independent forensic investigation into Mnisi, the report that was tabled. And some are saying that the Tshwane councillors voted the way they voted because this report ultimately did not deem the allegations against him as that serious. Your sentiment on that?
So that forensic report found that he had breached the supply chain management regulations, that he had breached the code of conduct for staff members. And if you look at the regulations of discipline of senior managers, that clearly defines as serious those allegations. Once you breach the law, once you are accused of breaching the law, it immediately becomes serious. It's only for minor breaches of the disciplinary code that you can say written warning or reprimand or some such. So those councillors knew, and we warned them. We argued this in council. We pointed to those regulations and said, are you crazy? What are you voting for? And they did it nonetheless because there's a political agenda here, and what we fear more and more, that Mnisi is being benefited so that he can in turn benefit the ANC, the EFF and Action SA.
Beyond this court battle, what are the other plans that the DA plans to embark on to intensify, of course, the protection to have Mettler ultimately returned and to push back against Mnisi? Are there any other measures that you are planning to perhaps explore?
Well, we're going to fight in this court. We respect the court processes. We'll see what the outcome is. But also remember, we are a political party. So we are fighting to win in this election. We are fighting to get as many people registered as possible before next week, Monday, when the voters' roll is likely to close. And what we are asking the people of Tshwane to do is help us take back your city. Take back your city from this corrupt cabal that has captured it. Take back your city from the puppet parties who just enable the old networks of tenderpreneurs, of cadres, of comrades to keep on holding on to power. So we fight to win.
Okay, just lastly, Mr. Brink, you know the ongoing criticism that the DA uses the courtrooms to fight political battles. Is this not one of those?
So what do? If you're in a council meeting, you win the vote, the Speaker then rigs the vote. In a constitutional democracy with the rule of law, your only thing to do is then to approach a court of law. We are not going to sit back and allow a Speaker to rig a democratic vote. That is why we have the courts. It's not a manipulation of processes, but of course you are right in one sense. The voters also have a role to play. They must see what is happening in Tshwane and they must act accordingly to help us stop this.
Thank you so much there. Celia Brink, who is the DA's Tshwane mayoral candidate, saying that they will fight tooth and nail. Of course, we're gearing up for the court battle that is about to start around 10 o'clock here at the Pretoria High Court. While we wait on that, I toss it to my colleague Ayanda Nyati at the Madlanga Commission.
All right, Patricia, thank you very much for that report.